Welcome to Harvesting Hope, a space where we share stories of resilience, growth, and the courage it takes to walk an unexpected path. Today's episode is audio only, and that choice was made with great intention and respect. My guest is an autism mom whose son is now 25 years old and living a full, independent life. Out of love for his privacy and autonomy, we've chosen to keep this conversation focused on her voice, her journey, and her wisdom. This episode isn't about labels, it's about lived experience. It's about perseverance, advocacy, and the strategies that help turn uncertainty into possibility. I'm honored to hold space for this conversation, and I'm grateful to my guest for sharing her story so openly. So let's begin. Thank you so much for coming here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Can you take us back to the early days when you first realized your child's development might look different?
Yes. So I think the first time I really noticed it was when he was probably about 9 months old. He had this thing that he would do with the magnetic letters that you put on the refrigerator.
Mm-hmm.
They were actually on our dishwasher. And he would play with those letters every day. He thought they were pretty cool. They're colorful, right? I'm trying to teach him the alphabet.
Yeah.
So he's 9 months old. He is walking at this point. He was a really early walker. And he would go up to the dishwasher and he would say, "Mom, what's this letter?" And I would say, "That's the letter B." And he would ask, "Is this the mama bee or the baby bee?" And I would say, "That's the mama bee."
Mm.
And he was like, "Okay." And he would ask maybe 1, 2, 3 letters at a time. And then one day I came down the stairs and all of the letters were lined up on the dishwasher, uppercase, lowercase,
Oh, wow.
from A to Z. So
Amazing.
call my husband at the time, say, "Did you line up those letters?" I know this is an odd question, but did you line those
Yeah.
letters up on the dishwasher?
Mhm.
And he says, "No, why would I do that?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "I don't know, because it's just an odd thing, right? It's you, me, and this child."
Right.
And that was probably the first time that I realized that there was something different about him.
Mm-hmm.
He knew his letters really young. He knew his colors really young. He knew numbers. He knew so many things. He was like a little mini robot, kind of, walking and tiny. So it was super like, there's something here.
Right. But right away, you also saw that this is a gifted child. Like, this is not your normal
Right.
thing where, kids don't know how to do that. They don't know that there's a big letter and a small, like what, at 9 months old or,
Right.
yeah. So
Between
that,
9 months
and
and around a year, like
yeah.
in that period of time, it developed over that period of
Yeah.
time. But he started it at like 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then I took him to the pediatrician by like his 18-month checkup.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked the pediatrician if it was possible that he could know his colors.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, no, kids don't know their colors, even like in kindergarten sometimes.
Right.
So
Without even anybody teaching them.
well,
So,
not purposefully
right.
teaching. It was not that I
Like
sat there with
play.
flashcards or anything like
Right.
that, because he wasn't going to sit for flashcards. He was getting information randomly.
Mm-hmm.
So then I told the pediatrician, I said, well, if you ask him, like, I could show you. And I said, I can show you the car. And he can say what color the car is. And he goes, no, but kids can memorize things. I go, okay, you ask him a color in here, in
Right.
this room, ask him a color.
Mm-hmm.
And he pointed to something and he goes, Noah, what color is this? And he said, it's burgundy.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't just red, it
Right.
was
He's
burgundy.
specific about it.
Right.
Right. Okay.
So how do you know it's burgundy? Because it has more purple or something like that. I don't even remember, but it was that it had something more than maroon did or something more than red did.
Mm-hmm.
So then the pediatrician's like, well, I'm not sure. And that's kind of where we left it.
Mm-hmm. And then as he got older, did he go to school like at a regular age, or did you put him in school because of the fact that he was gifted? What did you do from then?
I put him in a mom and tot class.
Mhm.
So he didn't go to the traditional 3-year-old preschool. He went to a mom and tot class at that time.
Mhm.
And I thought that was probably the best path for him, because he was super smart, but socially, he was still lacking the social skills part. So he would, if they're playing in the little, those sandboxes that they have, the wooden sandboxes, he's playing with his cars and a kid can be playing next to him. He doesn't realize that there's a child holding the car,
Right.
playing with the car.
Right.
The car was there. So he would grab the car and
Mm.
take the car. And it almost appeared as like he was a bully.
Right.
And I'm like, he's not a bully. He just isn't even aware that the kid is
Right.
holding. That's how unaware
Right.
of social.
Right.
He just would see the car kind of over there
Mhm.
and take the car. So he really wasn't good with personal space.
Mhm.
And it would cause issues, of course, because kids don't like
They
you
don't like
taking
it.
things,
Yeah.
So that would happen. So he did a mom and tot class at 3. I did put him in a normal preschool at 4.
Mhm.
He did okay. His report card or whatever they call it in preschool was mainly the same thing.
Right.
Like he, needs to work on his social skills. He's very verbal. He can read, he can do writing and all this kind of stuff, but he really needed to work on his social skills and also maintaining his focus
Mhm.
with the circle time. He just
Right.
didn't understand standing in line, holding his hands to himself, all of that kind of stuff. And I know some of that's normal 4-year-old. That's why they're going there to learn
Right.
for when they get to kindergarten. But his was every report card.
Mm.
It was not making improvements basically
Mhm.
on the things socially that he should have been.
Okay. So when you were there at school, what recommendations did you get from the staff over there? Like, what did they tell you? Like, of course, did you get a diagnosis? Did they? I mean, what was their recommendation on how to help him improve his social skills?
That level, they didn't actually say a whole lot.
Okay.
Not preschool level. It
Mhm.
didn't happen until later that I started getting the teachers saying, because I think at kindergarten, like preschool, kindergarten, I think they're still
They're
all
still
learning
learning.
that. And
Right.
so it's not,
Right.
they're all on a spectrum of how far have they learned,
Mhm.
or how much have they learned with standing in line and holding their hands to themselves. And
Right.
he's a boy because they kind of did he's a boy.
Right.
And so they're more active and they do take a little bit longer or whatever.
Mhm.
So I don't think that we didn't really get any tips until until grade school.
So then early on, like you're saying, of course, like children, they start preschool, kindergarten, everybody's pretty much similar when it comes to social skills and things like that. So it doesn't really stand out that there's like an issue that needs to be addressed. When did you see that, okay, there is an issue? My son is not developing normally when it comes to social skills. And what did you do about it?
Well, I think I noticed mostly at the parties, they would have a Christmas party or Valentine's party or whatever kind of party was going on. And the kids would all be socializing in some way. They're all making crafts together or dancing together or talking. And he was in the corner.
Yeah.
And he really loved to fold paper airplanes. He could fold these meticulous paper airplanes, and that's super cool. But that would be what he was doing at the parties.
Mm.
So I think that was the biggest thing. Biggest thing that stands out is that he wasn't engaged. And like even his sports teams, they would gather around. He would be on the outside of the circle,
Mm.
like behind at least a foot behind, not in the pack. He
Mhm.
wasn't the kind of person that would be in the pack. Still, is that abnormal? Maybe he's just an introvert, right? You could always say all these different reasons why he wouldn't be involved. I mean, maybe he just didn't like the party was too loud or who knows. So it was hard to say even at that point, is he different or is he just introverted or he's just not interested or I'm not sure. So
Right.
it never really
Right.
became a big issue at that point.
Right.
I do remember in 3rd or 4th grade, his teacher after class came to me and said, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "Sure." And she said, "Your son had a big problem talking today. He would not stop talking." And I was like, "Yay! He didn't stop talking." Oh, I'm really sorry. I'll address this at home. But I was just super excited that he was actually talking in
Right.
school. Like he
Right.
finally got in trouble for talking, which that wasn't what he would get in trouble for in
Mhm.
school. Was he was always by himself. And so that was kind of actually a moment of realization that that it's going in the right direction.
Right.
And
Right.
that was probably 3rd or 4th grade.
3rd or 4th grade. So it looked like the teachers, though, weren't aware of the fact that, he was different. Because for them to complain about the fact that so they don't know what was going on with him.
Right.
When did you share this with the teachers that, I guess what I'm trying to say is, when did you get a formal diagnosis? When did you know that, okay, we have something now that we need to work with. My son is different. He is developing different. We need to work at these skills. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. He wasn't in a public school
Okay.
until I want to say eighth or ninth grade. It was ninth grade, I think. And just before going into ninth grade, he broke his arm,
Okay.
his left arm. He's right-handed,
Oh,
but he broke his left arm. So you think that doesn't
right.
affect anything.
Right.
You can write, you can
Mhm.
type, right? You could do it
Right.
one-handed. But for him, he couldn't. He couldn't write. He had a broken arm. And he would say that to me. And I'm like, honey, it's your left arm. You are right-handed, so why can you not write? And this was one of those moments that you're like, this is where you feel like the autism comes in.
Okay.
Because the rigidity there, he was so stuck on the fact that his arm was broken, that he couldn't write. It didn't make sense at all. So
Right.
sometimes things don't make sense.
Right.
And so I went to the teachers, and at this point he's in public school. So I said, they actually had called a parent teacher conference because he was completely failing, like, 3-4 weeks into school. And if he doesn't get to his classes, he's not going to pass the semester.
Right.
So I said, well, my son is on the spectrum.
Mhm.
And they said, well, you don't have an official diagnosis for him.
Mm.
And I said, no, I don't. And so I never did get the official diagnosis because of one of his teachers in his other school said, right now he comes across on the records as gifted because he's very gifted.
Mhm.
And he
Very
comes across,
smart.
yes.
Grades are
And
high.
so he's coming across as gifted, and public schools like gifted kids.
Right.
They're smart, you can work with that.
Mhm.
It's not autism where there's a stigma behind this
Yeah.
autism. And for me, it was like I didn't want him to actually have that stigma coming in with him. I wanted them to see him. He's, like I said, he's quiet in class. He's not super social. He's a smart, so his grades are good, all that. He did have some issues that he came with that were different,
Mhm.
but in general, he's a good kid.
Mhm.
So the teacher said, you should think about that because if he goes and transfers to a public school, that's going to come with him and they're going to look at that on a piece of paper.
That's right.
They're not going to look at that when they see him.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, I was forced to have him diagnosed because they would not make any exceptions for his grade or grades of all of his classes his freshman year if I didn't have the diagnosis. They were not going to make an exception to the rule because he,
Yeah. How did you know though? Because I know you mentioned that, you told them that he has autism. How did you know this? Because you didn't have a formal diagnosis.
no.
How did you feel? How did you know this?
I actually did a lot of reading with him growing up because it started back when he was like 9 months old doing
Right.
letters.
Right.
Like a 9-month-old isn't doing letters or being able to label them.
Mm.
So I started reading really when he was really young,
Mhm.
and I just kept putting the pieces together. And the more I read, the more it made sense. And the more, it made it nice for me because there was a word that helped me to understand, which helped me to also guide him in what did he need to learn. Because if you look up information on autism, there are some things that they have in common, like they don't make eye contact. So he did not make eye contact. He did not like looking at people's eyes. I have no idea. He just said it makes him uncomfortable. He didn't like to make eye contact. So him and I actually came up with he was to look at people's eyebrows. So
Mm.
it appears as though he's looking at their eyes. Can
Right.
you tell if
Yeah,
we're looking eyebrows or
exactly.
eyeballs?
Right.
You can't
No,
tell.
you can't.
So some of the things that we did along the way came from that reading that I did. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. He doesn't like to make eye contact. So what do I have to do? What thing do I have to do to get him to make eye contact?
Mhm.
So we made up this game. It was probably third or fourth grade also, that he had to go to school and he had to find 2 people who had blue eyes.
Mm.
And then he would come home with those 2 people's names and put them on a chart because he loved charts. So he would write, Joey and Susie have blue eyes. So we played this thing so that he would get the appropriate eye contact, for greeting people, for talking to people. So it was like little things like that that we did.
Which is amazing because most of the time when people get a diagnosis or not even get a diagnosis, because I think way before the diagnosis, a mom has her own feelings, like your intuition, like you just said.
Mhm,
You knew from early on that,
mhm,
okay, he's different. It could be in a great way, obviously, which it is, because most of the time it is, because they're so special. I always say that about all kids on the spectrum. I think they're so special. And it's a gift to us
mhm.
because it gives us time to kind of go inward and see what can we do because we love them so much and they're so pure. They're pure souls literally walking on the face of the earth. And then it just allows you to know, to see, to me, I feel like it just, you see God's presence all the
Mhm.
time because it's a reminder like, this is for real. There's no fakeness.
Right,
This is who they are. They're not apologizing. They're not faking. They don't even know how to fake it.
right.
So and that just makes you kind of see that. But anyway, to go back to what you were saying, and it's great that you were engaged and you're trying to find these games to help your son. But I want to kind of go back a little bit. What was the feeling that you had when you're like, okay, my son, it looks like my son has this. What was your feeling? Because a lot of times, and that was great because a lot of times people don't do that. They don't jump from knowing that, okay, he has autism. Now let's see what we can do. That's phenomenal.
Mhm.
Many people go into depression. Many people have questions like, why me? Why my son? What were the feelings that you had when you found that? And is this your oldest son?
Oldest. Mhm.
Okay. So what were your thoughts, your feelings at that time?
Well, I did have that. I had actually mixed emotions because of the way that I feared society and what was the long-term journey for him.
Yeah.
So I feared that. So that was partially where I got the motivation. I'm like, I have to teach him like some things that are socially acceptable, like
Right.
how to shake hands, how to look in eye contact, how to carry on conversations. You have to break that down to
Hmm.
basics. But on the other hand, he was just so pure, so amazing, so happy, so easy. Like he
Hmm.
was an easy, easy child as long as you stayed within the rules.
Right.
If you violate the rules, is when you'd have trouble in the classroom,
Hmm.
especially. The teacher says, no talking. No talking means zero talking. It
That's right.
doesn't mean whisper in the back of the class.
Yeah.
So kids are whispering in the back of the class. What happens to him? He's thinking, no
No
talking, no
talking. No
talking, no
talking. Yeah.
talking, and he can't get past that.
Right.
And that's when he becomes a behavior in class.
Hmm.
And so remember the quiet little kid, then that quiet little kid somehow acts out and, he ends up being punished or pushed out in the hall or whatever, right? So mostly my feelings were, I think, based on society's perception
You're
of
afraid.
I was afraid
Yeah.
and, I cried. I laughed, I cried, I went through every emotion that there was.
Yeah.
My family didn't understand, my friends didn't understand, the schools didn't understand, nobody really understood. I felt like I was on an island alone,
Alone. Yeah.
and this is why it's really great that you and I are talking
Yeah.
because the
Absolutely.
island is gonna get bigger
Yeah.
and we're all going to be here for each other and we
Right.
can all go through our own stories
Right.
with our children
Yeah. Because
and
someone right now is going to be listening to us that is probably getting that early diagnosis right now,
right.
or probably doesn't even have a diagnosis and like just has that feeling. And they're probably terrified
Hmm.
because it is scary,
Hmm.
like you're saying. And then you feel like you're alone because everybody in the beginning is in denial phase.
First.
And that's what happened to me as well because I saw it early on. But if I was talking to my husband or my family, they're like, no, no. And that, like you said earlier, he's a boy.
He's a boy.
Boys do that. Or whether if they're a late talker, now in your case, it's great. He was talking, which was great. But like, so my case, he wasn't talking. And people would be like, he's a boy. Boys don't talk. They don't talk early on. Girls, they're more chattier.
Hmm.
And then you're like, I see there's a huge problem and we're just wasting time. What do I do?
Right.
So, who was the person that did get you, or did you find anybody to support you?
My mom,
Okay.
she didn't, I don't think she fully understood it, but she was very receptive
Hmm.
because I would say he's very much into routine, for example. He's very strict on the routine. You can't do things outside of the routine. If
Right.
you want to actually have cooperation out of the kid,
Hmm.
you do it in this routine. And she was very good about, she didn't understand, but she did understand it made her life easier when she was babysitting them to stick to the routine.
Yeah.
And so over the years, she's been definitely my biggest supporter. She still to this day is like, okay, is there anything else? Like trying, and she's very intrigued by it, like the success. Cause I do believe that I also have a brother that has never been diagnosed, but I think that it's nice because we're learning in this generation.
Right.
And we didn't learn back then. And she didn't learn back then, but we're now learning with this generation and helping him to be successful because some of the same challenges that we had with my brother.
Yeah. Yeah. So what were the next steps after that? What did you do to help improve his, all the aspects? I know you did a lot at home
Mhm.
with working with him, but did you get outside, literal support that can help him in socialization and eye contact and all the things that are going to make him be successful at school? What was your next step?
I did feel like I didn't have help.
Mm,
It was hard to convince them because he was so smart.
right.
Um, he, trying to get like occupational therapy, for
Right.
example, that they could help him because I went back to school.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, but I'm helping him all the time. So when I go back to school and I'm not as present with him, he is going to fall backwards in all of the things that we have done because he
Right.
needs actually to continue learning how to
Right.
wear 2 shoes to school
Yeah.
because he would get in the car with 1 shoe. Now, I didn't know he only had 1 shoe on until we got there.
Yeah.
And I was like, where's your other shoe? So my mom and I ended up carrying extra shoes or
Right.
carrying a belt or,
Right.
just different things to work through that. But until it becomes a habit for them, you can say it a million times. You can go through it a million times. And until their brain finally picks that up,
Mm-hmm.
you have to make sure that he has 2 pairs of shoes, 2 shoes, the whole pair of shoes, I
And
guess.
like you're saying, if it's not part of the routine, they're not going to do it.
Right.
It has to be part of the routine. And if you skip a step in the routine, then
Exactly.
you're going to miss the
That's
step
how we're
after.
missing, right? So I didn't feel like the school actually wanted to label him, some of the teachers, I should say, not the school in general, but some of the teachers wanted to label him as a behavior.
Mhm.
And they wanted to label him like ADD, ADHD, like non-compliant, whatever kind of, they wanted to give him that. Because I know that when I did actually try to help him right around that 4th grade mark, and they just really, did not help. It was all ADD and ADHD, and he needed to be medicated. And I was like, that is so not
It's horrible.
true what
Yeah.
he needs.
Right.
He definitely, he's the kid that sits in the corner for hours in school folding paper airplanes. So I'm not really considering that an ADD issue
Right.
as much as I'm considering it like, he does need help socializing. He needs help with just the occupational things. And he did not get a lot of that from the outside world. Like I said, my family was, they didn't know. My friends really didn't know. I felt like the professionals were trying to push him down this other place. And
Yeah.
was he a boy? Yes, he was a boy. He was active. He was definitely that. I don't know that I would necessarily call it ADD until his anxiety went up.
Exactly.
So something's going on. Like this was a perfect example. He could hear the drums. He's in math class and he could hear the drums in the band all the way down.
That's right.
So he went and asked the teacher if he could, do something else because he couldn't focus on his math because the drums. And she said, "You can't hear the drums. You can't hear the drums. That's all the way down the hall." And he's like, "I can't focus because all I can hear are the drums."
Yeah.
And we had his hearing tested when he was young. He had hearing of a dog. Like his senses,
Yeah.
like his eyes were very sensitive to light. His ears were very
And
sensitive
that's
to
why you
sound.
see them covering
His
their ears.
touch, his skin was very sensitive to
Right.
touch. Like his senses were in overload. And so when he came home that day, he was punished in school. And the teacher was like, well, he wouldn't do his math. He said he could hear the drums. You can't hear the drums. It's way down the hall, blah, 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 whatever. And I was like, okay, he can hear the drums. Because you know what? The best part about him, the purity of the whole thing was he was not a manipulative kid.
No.
Like if I had the 2 boys, one of them did something, I'll say, who did it?
Right.
Even if he did it himself, he's like, I did it.
Exactly.
Like he was so honest. He
Yeah.
wouldn't even, my other son's like, I didn't do it. Da, da, da.
Yeah.
But he never denied it. If he did it, he's like, I did it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, son,
Mm-hmm.
did you hear the drums?
Right.
And he said, yes. It was going on the entire math class, and I could not focus. I tried to advocate for myself, basically, is what he says. And he said, the teacher told me I couldn't hear it. So,
Was that a time you sat down with the teacher and said, "Listen, this is what's going on"?
yes.
Because, like unfortunately, they want to put kids in a box with a label
Mhm.
and think that there's just a one way to fix everything, and it's not. And I think, I mean, I've been teaching for many years, and I do. When we get students who are special needs, we do get like a file,
Mhm.
and it'll say, like you're saying, ADD, ADHD,
Yep.
or whatnot. And the problem with that, it's like automatically teachers assume that, okay, well, he's lazy because he's that, and that's all wrong. And now, of course, nowadays, because we have moms like you advocating for the kids, and so I believe teachers now have that awareness, and that's why they have more individualized IE plans,
Mhm.
educational plans. So it's definitely getting better. But a lot of people go through that all the time where they're honest and that's exactly how they feel. It's not a behavioral issue
Mhm.
because they can literally hear
Right?
what's going on. And it causes anxiety because nobody's understanding them.
Mhm.
And then right away, the teachers are going to be like, oh, well, that's a behavioral issue. No, it's not. They're
Exactly.
anxious because nobody understands that they're honest about it. And they need to be in a separate room
Mhm.
where they can focus, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
Right.
And so, but it's difficult. It's
Right.
difficult when your son is getting punished for something that he has no control over.
Right, and he didn't understand, and
Yeah,
which made it
yeah,
worse.
yeah,
But I'll tell you, he had some fantastic teachers
yeah,
also
yeah.
that, I actually made millions of copies for. I cut out things, I did poster boards, I did all
Oh,
kinds of work for the classroom
yeah,
because I wanted them to know how I appreciated them because they were just phenomenal. They
yeah.
just tried to understand even if they didn't understand, they tried to understand. And, it was a really great program in general. It was a fantastic program. I'm glad that I put him there. And they did a really wonderful job. He wouldn't be where he is today had he been in a public school in our area, just because I know that it's too hard. They had people in the classroom that helped, like a lot of volunteer parents and stuff like that that helped. And I know that our schools need more help like that in order to have him mainstreamed. So, I think that he did really well because of that program and the teachers there that understood.
Mm-hmm.
You're always going to have people that don't
Right,
that don't
right,
work with you, and they're just going to go, he's a bad kid, he disrupts my class. I can't get any teaching done with that kid here.
right, right.
So,
Now, there's a lot of really great programs like in the public schools now, but I think for the ones that are like with your son, of course, he's, higher functioning. And so you want him to be mainstreamed with support.
right.
But for the other kids who are just like severely, disabled or have like more needs that needs to be addressed, the public school definitely does a better job now of
Right.
handling it because they have the special classrooms.
Right.
But then they're not really mainstreamed. But I'm sure now they're trying to have like a system where they're somewhat mainstream because
Mhm.
we want them to socialize. But I think they're doing a better job now, like you're saying, about
Right.
getting the support, and there's more awareness and things like that, which is great. So we definitely want to say they are listening to. I don't want people calling me and saying, "Hey, I'm a
Yeah.
public school." So I know they're amazing, and I'm a public school teacher myself, so I
Right.
know they do the best that they can with the resources that they
It's
have.
that. It's the resources.
Yeah,
It
they're
has
very
nothing to do
limited.
with
I know.
anything else.
Right.
But the way that the school that he went to, they
Right.
had more teachers in the classroom.
Exactly.
So if you're the only teacher of 30 children
Right.
and you have my son in class, oh,
It's not easy. You need to, you need help.
you
Yeah.
can't do it
Right.
because it's just, what is it now?
Right.
Because you can't control the
You're
fact that I said no talking and he's interpreting it as zero talking. So the kids back there are talking. Well, it's okay that in her mind, it's okay
they're
that they're
whispering.
whispering because
Right.
they're not disrupting the
But he
class.
can't focus because now he's thinking you're not following the rules.
Right.
And
So now he becomes the problem
right,
because they're not
right.
following the rules. So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Like, for sure, nothing. They went to public schools. They graduated. My
of
boys
course.
did.
Yeah.
And I'm a full believer in public schools. I wish that we could help more, that
Right.
we could, I don't know if we could take some kind of funding for something, some kind of fundraising, some kind of something to help support those
Right.
teachers
Right.
because I, you can't. You
Mhm.
can't have my kid in a class with 29 other kids.
Yeah. No,
So
no, that's difficult. Very
not alone.
difficult. So, and I know you shared with me previously that you did a lot of nutrition work and testing, and so tell us more about how you helped your son get to where he is today. Obviously, we have a success story here. He's fully functioning. He's doing great.
Mhm.
He's independent, which is amazing, and that's what everybody strives for, right?
Right.
And I know that everybody has their own way of describing what the situation is, but we all want our kids to be successful.
Right.
So what can you teach us today about the things that you went through and the testing and the nutrition
Mhm.
that can help our listeners do with their kids today?
Okay. So for his nutrition, he, definitely had sensitivities. He didn't have allergies. He was not allergic to milk. He wasn't allergic to different things. But he definitely had sensitivities, and his stomach was a wreck.
Mhm.
He didn't have normal bowel movements. He didn't have regular bowel movements. His stomach was sensitive to I couldn't even figure out what he was sensitive to in general. So we tried so many different things like, we were pretty gluten-free growing up because that was one thing that really bloated for him was the gluten and caused constipation, and that was miserable for him. And then he had trouble also with dairy. And not to say that every autistic kid has a gluten sensitivity or a dairy sensitivity, that could just be in a family. But
Right.
for him, it actually made him, I think, more because it was uncomfortable and he didn't
Hmm.
really know how to even communicate that he was uncomfortable. So I think that definitely made him pace more
Hmm.
or wring his hands more or, do any of his obsessions more. And I felt like if we stayed away from some of those things, that he did better.
Hmm.
He actually had a better day, he had a better night's sleep, and in general, he loved all food. So he would eat anything,
That's
which
great.
some
No,
some
yeah,
autistic
a
kids
lot of kids are
don't
really
eat
picky.
anything,
Right.
but he was like the other way. He ate everything. Like, "That's not food, honey." Like, he would eat anything, but I don't know, like, what signals he was getting from his stomach to his head that he was like, he would eat anything. Then he was tiny, so it wasn't like he was overeating or anything like that, but he did eat a lot for a little guy.
Hmm.
But we definitely had to make sure that he ate a lot of fruits and vegetables. We always talked about, you know, truthfully, if God made it, if it grows on a tree or a bush,
Right.
or if it's an animal that was raised well, then that was basically what we did for his food. And he did much better. It
Hmm.
was like the mixed packages because, you just don't know sometimes what's in there. He had more trouble with anything that was like a pre-made mixed
Hmm.
package.
So
So
everything natural, whole foods, pretty much.
pretty much.
And then when you say it got better, like how and like in what way did he get better? Like what did you see when he was eating well and
Mhm.
eating healthy? What kind of behaviors, let's say for example, or what kind of things that did you see that got better with his improvements?
So I think that, like I said, I think that his stomach would get, if he wouldn't eat the right thing, that his stomach would get agitated and then that agitated him.
Mm,
And he was much more obsessive, doing obsessive things over and over and over and over and over and over, or pacing
yeah.
or wringing his hands, or definitely easier to upset,
Hmm.
mood wise. So he had less patience and like those kind of things.
Hmm.
And I felt like,
And more calm. Did you
and
feel like he was more
yeah,
calmer?
like,
Oh
in
wow.
general, he is
Yeah.
a calm
Mm,
person, but if you did anything, that pushed him out of that, like, there's a drum
right.
down the hall,
Yeah.
or I would give him the wrong food or whatever, there were all these things. I just said, "He's a super easy kid if
Right.
you stay within the rules.
Right.
If you
Right.
got outside the rules in any way, then that was when I had trouble."
So you made sure that when it came to his diet, like the certain foods that were not good for his gut, which is, by the way, many kids, obviously, we know that on the spectrum,
Mhm,
many of them have gut issues. And my son, he went through that as well with the severe constipation.
mhm.
And for us, the olive oil and like you're saying, just pretty much whole foods. Now, the good thing about your son, he was eating. My son, the opposite extreme, he wasn't eating anything.
Right.
So we had to kind of, take it baby steps to get him to eat, and that took a while too. But his gut had to heal, and everybody's at a different journey when it comes to the gut healing. And we all know that now with science, now that it's all about the gut and
Mhm.
the health of the gut, which affects the health of the brain and everything else. So So that was good. You did that. And then what other things did you do with nutrition? Like what kind of testing did you do? Like what would you recommend people do when it comes to nutrition and healing? Now with sensitivities, that's a great test because you're
Right.
not going to know what to avoid
Right.
until you do those sensitivities tests.
Mhm.
And then what would be the next step?
I did actually take him to a nutritionist
Okay.
who guided us a lot in our journey, and it was like I could come with different issues that he would have, like the constipation, for
Mhm.
example. And then she just would give us like consulting on like different foods that are more constipating, which we all knew because he would eat them and get constipated. But then, like how do you live a life? The big part is how do you live a life? It's not realistic that I can have him at home for every single meal.
Right.
So you have to eat out sometimes. And what do you do to eat out, or what do you what do you do for his lunch, for
Mhm.
example? And what specific nutrient does what?
Mm.
So we have that old adage of you want strong teeth and bones, then what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to drink milk, right?
Mhm.
They always say that. So there are nutrients that actually can help build his stomach, and nutrients that can help build his brain, like
Mhm.
your olive oil for their brain. And so it was basically trying to focus on whatever would come up like that,
Mhm.
like one thing at a time. If it was for his stomach, then we tried actually a lot of probiotics for his stomach, but he could not do a lot of probiotics. So we ended up going more towards like foods that they were fermented foods,
Mhm.
trying to get it that way instead of he couldn't eat yogurt because of the dairy.
Yeah.
He couldn't take a pill, a probiotic pill. So it's like trying to figure out how do I get that same probiotic, but I can't get it in pill form. I
No.
can't get it in yogurt. I
No,
can't get it
because
in the easy things.
and when I met with Dr. Nemechek in Arizona, that was one of the first things he told me. He's like, I'm going to tell you right away, do not give him probiotics
Mhm.
because they cannot handle it and you're going to see the behavior worsen.
It did.
So he was like, stick with at the time, he told us to stick with the three basic things, which were olive oil, inulin fiber, which is a prebiotic
Mhm.
to help feed the good bacteria, and fish oil.
Yeah.
So the fish oil and the olive oil are working to lower inflammation so that the brain can heal itself because he called it a brain injury. Of course, many people might disagree with that because they don't want to feel like their kid has any kind of injury or especially a brain injury. But he said that with all the inflammation that's happening in the body, it's causing
Right.
injury. And then everybody's different.
Right.
At what extent is their injury level?
Right.
Some people who are not that much can be okay. This is an ADD situation, or this is this situation. I don't know. Again, everybody has their own views on that. But when you're talking about probiotics, you're not the first one that says that. With
Mhm.
probiotics, it's very difficult.
Yep.
So to skip it altogether is probably a good thing.
Right.
And then, but like you're saying, but then what do? You can't give them but you need the
He needed
healthy form
something.
of probiotic. But to give them yogurt, you can't.
Right.
I tried with my son to do like coconut yogurt.
Mhm.
It's disgusting for him. He
Right.
wasn't going to have it. So and I called Dr. Nemec. I'm like, what do we do? He's like, just leave it out completely. Don't worry about this
Right.
part. Just focus on the healing. Focus on
Mhm.
lowering inflammation in the body. So
Right.
yeah. So please go ahead. So yeah, you were doing all of that.
Right. And there are many different things that you can do. You can add
Right.
oregano, you can add turmeric, you can add there's so many things that
Right.
it would be funny because at some point he would say, "Are there lentils in it, mom?" Because I would put like weird things in muffins or whatever just to kind of give that little
Give the whole
boost,
nutrition. Right.
right? Because he didn't do very well with breads and stuff.
Right.
So it was like, okay, so we're going to give you gluten free. But if you have gluten free, you're going to need a little bit more in there. So it was like, what can I put in there to add a
Yeah.
few more
It's a puzzle,
nutrients? It
really.
sure is.
Yeah, yeah, and then to figure out what works and then what they like, 'cause,
Hmm.
most of them are,
Right.
not
He's
good
like
eaters, but
totally the opposite
yeah,
of
which is
what
great.
I read, right?
That's a gift.
It's like, that kid, the only thing you won't eat is pickles,
Oh, wow.
pretty much.
Yeah, that's not a problem at
Right.
all. Yeah.
We can avoid pickles.
Oh, yeah.
But so I studied nutrients quite heavily, trying to figure out like all the different supplements and herbs and tinctures and lotion, you name it,
Mm.
like diffuser. I just read about everything and anything that I could read about. And if I tried it on him, of course the pediatrician's like, oh no, you cannot do that. I'm not going to actually say that I back that, right? So anything that I did had to be purely on me because they don't have the ability to write a prescription for that.
No. Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, after I read on it for who knows how long, I would read about this. And I was like, okay, what foods have turmeric, for example? And then I would try to make sure that I would get, I would get the spices on the spice rack and I would try to put turmeric in his food because it was anti inflammatory and it's supposed to help with all this stuff. And so if I said there was one thing that helped him, no, I
Mm-hmm.
can't actually tell you the one thing that helped him.
Right.
I do know that he's a very good eater, and he's still to this day a very good eater. He's a clean eater. He does know at 25 that he feels better if he eats things that agree with his stomach.
Right.
So he's still a really good eater. He's now a triathlete, so he's doing really well with that. Um, he graduated from the University of Michigan.
That's amazing.
Yep, he's in his career. So I do believe that nutrition has a lot to do with his path for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And also being a mom that just advocates for
Right.
them all the
Right.
time. When the teacher pulls me aside and says something, I have to have his back. There was a
Right.
reason. He doesn't
Right.
just act out.
Right. Right. And that's the key thing that we're saying right now. It's that every child is different. It's literally a puzzle. We're
Mhm.
putting the pieces together. We can't right now say, okay, well, everybody, if you do this, you're going to see this kind of result. Everybody is different. Every child is different. But what we're saying here is that really it's the mom and hopefully the dad, but at least one parent.
One, because one has to work.
Exactly.
One has to
One has to
24/7.
right, right, right.
Yeah.
And then just to advocate and just to tell your son or your daughter that no, you're not crazy. I totally understand what you're saying
Right.
because that alone will help them feel so good and help them on their journey.
Mhm.
But it's amazing to hear the great news that he's doing great and very successful,
Yep.
and all these things literally with your support and love, and I'm sure you're with God's presence in your life too, because we can never do it with that without God. Definitely helped you get your son to where he needed to be. Any advice that you would have to a mom that's listening to us today
Mhm.
that you
Yes.
can tell?
My biggest advice is listen.
Mm,
The teachers tell you, right? People, the neighbors, any like coach or anyone that they kind of interact with, I say they, listen to them. You don't have to, like, I don't have to listen to the teacher and go, okay, my son's ADD. I'm not saying that. But when she says, he said he could hear the drum down the hall, I shouldn't just go, no, he couldn't.
right.
I should automatically say it's possible that he heard that drum down the hall.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me, it was to get the issue from the teacher, from the coach, from whoever, to get that issue and then figure out what do I have to do.
Right.
So in the math class, I actually said, okay, he can hear the drums. You can't hear the drums, but he can hear the drums. So can he wear earphones during math? And the
Very
teacher was
nice.
like, he can't listen to, he can't have a radio, but
Right.
he could have the sound reducing
Mm-hmm.
earphones. So it's constantly thinking of things that way.
Right.
Like he doesn't make eye contact. So I had a contest with him with the chart.
Mm-hmm.
Go find 4 pair of blue eyes or
Right.
whatever. Anything that comes up when you're listening to the teachers, but listen to it in whole, right? Because if I would have just focused on what she talked about, like he said, he was being a bad boy because he said he could do that and he wasn't listening to me. I heard that and I want to make it better for the teacher, but I also want to make it better for my son.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, he can hear that. So what do we have to do?
Right.
You can't do his math with his hands on his ears, but he could do math with his
You have to
earphones on.
find a way. You have to work
Amazingly,
together to find a way
right?
to help them.
Amazingly, he
Right.
put the earphones on and voila, you
Yeah.
solved the problem.
Right.
So I always say if he is so if he is acting out of character, there's something sensory going on. There's a rule being violated. There's something to it. It's not, he doesn't just do it.
Right.
So it's
Because
listen to that.
exactly. And teachers know because when we're in school, we're taking, one of the basic principles is Maslow's law, which is if your basic needs are not met,
Hmm.
you cannot focus. We know that as teachers. That's one
Exactly.
of our courses in,
Right.
College of Education. So if we don't feel, so first, as a human being, we have to have our food, right? We have to eat. And then for us to be in a non-stressful situation, we have to feel not anxious, which
Mhm.
means comfortable.
Mhm.
So that's part of our job as teachers, is to make the children feel comfortable. Everybody's different. Some
Yep.
people, if they're hearing the noise loud, we need to find a way, because if those needs are not met, there's no way we can learn. There's
Exactly.
no way. And so it is, and it's difficult to know that. But for you to advocate and to do that, that's amazing, because a lot of people do have they're afraid to talk,
Mhm.
and they're afraid that they're going to look stupid if they talk, or no, maybe, but no, no, looking stupid is way better than my child not being successful and not advocating for him and making sure that his needs are met in school. When my son was in the special ed class, he was around 4 or 5 years old, and we put him. It's a great. It was a great school district that we were in, and they had like probably 4 or 5 people in the class. So it was,
Nice.
nice,
That's what
very
I'm
good one
talking
on one.
about.
It's perfect.
If our public schools had that.
Exactly. So it was good, but and so my son, I would do everything for him at home, like his food, and we knew exactly what he needed to eat. I had the teachers involved, and they knew exactly what to feed him. They knew his routine. We talked about that. And then every time I would put him in school, he would get a flare up of his, because he had IBS,
Mhm.
irritable bowel syndrome. So he would get that flare up, and the teachers would call me, and then I would be like, okay, maybe, I talked to her, what happened? And she's like, well, everything is good. We're all with him. We're all supporting him. I'm like, but something is happening,
Mhm.
because he's not doing well. His health is not good, and he can't talk. So he's nonverbal. But I'm like, something is going on that's not allowing him to feel comfortable or safe, or,
Right.
and she's like, we're doing our best. I'm like, I'm sure you are, but there's something. So what I ended up doing is I would just randomly go to school without them knowing.
Mhm.
And I would just go and peek, and then they knew. I'm like, listen, you're gonna, I'm not crazy. I just want to see why he's having these flare ups, because
Mhm.
if he's home for vacation for 2-3 weeks, there's no flare ups. He's fine.
Right.
When I put him back in school, he gets a flare up.
Right.
So then I ended up looking and seeing at one point that there was this one child who was screaming all the time in class.
Right.
And then when that child would scream, he would get nervous and stressed out.
Mhm.
And then he would come home and he would get that flare up.
Right.
So what I ended up having to do, because they can't prevent a child from screaming,
Right.
because they all need to be there for their own reasons. And so I ended up pulling my son out of school for many years. And I was like, okay, right now we're just going to focus on healing.
Right.
We're just going to heal the body. We can focus on education later. Of course, I was going to try to do like homeschooling at home. But even with that, his stomach was a mess.
Mhm.
And if we were just, it was just literally about food and the bathroom.
Right.
That was it. It was like, okay, what do we do now? And then I can't even leave the house because of his situation. So we ended up spending many years, and that's how I got to the doctor that helped us with the nutrition. And what you're saying is extremely important about
Mhm.
nutrition, because that's really it. And and I want to say, like, kind of to sum up what you and I are talking about, it's nutrition, it's love, patience, and listening,
Right.
to make sure that we're giving them exactly what they need.
Mhm.
I want to thank you so much. I mean, I know we can go on and on and
We
on, but
could.
we want our listeners to kind of trust that we're going to keep it simple and sweet, so that they can come back next time. But I want to thank you so much for your time,
Yes, you're welcome.
and your wisdom and your journey, because what you've been through is amazing, and what a success story.
Mhm.
I'm so happy, and I know that your son is very happy now, living a wonderful life, and so I want to thank you for trusting us with your story, and for sharing your journey with us with such honesty and grace. Conversations like this remind us that hope doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it grows quietly through consistency, patience, and unwavering belief. To the parents listening today, wherever you are on your journey, know that progress looks different for every family, and possibility is not limited by timelines or labels. At Harvesting Hope, we believe that every story has the power to plant a seed, and today, I hope this conversation planted one of encouragement, strength, and grounded hope. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, keep harvesting hope.